I had put in my application for the job. And he was like, oh, that'd be so awesome if you got hired at Microsoft. And I'm like, it's never going to happen. I was like, this is like the first legitimate interview that I'm having in tech. There's no way I'm going to get offered the job. It's important to understand the job that you're applying to more than just titles, because especially right now with AI and the tooling getting more and more mature, those traditional software engineering roles as we see them today are gonna go away.
All right, we have today Richard Carrian. And Richard, I'm happy to have you. It is the second time or third time, I believe, we are talking on video. Love if you just introduce yourself to the audience and just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really happy to be here. My name is Richard Carrian. I sort of started my career in tech in like 2015, teaching myself to code. And at the time I was doing logistics and operations at like a manufacturing business, and I just didn't see a future in it. And so I'm like, okay, let's see what else I can get into. And so I was going through an accounting degree, and I realized by the end of it I don't like accounting at all. But I did take some web dev courses on the side, and I really got interested in those. And so then I started down sort of the usual learning path, so like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then started getting deeper into web dev with like React, Angular, things like that. And then I got my first opportunity at that same manufacturing business, where the current firm that was handling their web dev, they exited, and so they needed someone to take over the site and manage it. And so I took that over, and then from there, I started doing like process integrations, so like integrating with like other APIs and things, until eventually I got interviewed by Microsoft for a contract job. And I ended up here in 2020, and then just this past year I converted from being a contractor over to a full-time employee.
That's pretty cool. That's actually really amazing, and that's actually why this conversation's important, I think, for HackBuddy. You started off in a non-traditional software engineering role, and you're now working at a FAANG company, which is pretty impressive. And so, that's always the story. And I think people want to know, especially in 2025, I still get this question a lot, with people saying, the industry's dead, and, like there's so much competition and work going out there. Some stuff is getting outsourced. So, I kind of want to balance that with a healthy dose of reality. Yes, I mean, like, stuff gets amplified on social media, and, like, you can see there's a lot of crazy things going on, in, like, social media feeds and all that, Reddit, Hacker News, and all this stuff. But, like, I also kind of feel like, most of the time stuff is actually, like, stable day to day. As long as you're kind of, like, as long as you're kind of like working on yourself, right? Like, I think like that's always been the case. And I think you understand that a little bit better. Like our career, our jobs and stuff like that, are at risk. But I think like the people who are like always working and crafting like what they do, and like, like moving away from like, I am just this thing that fits in a box, this person that just fits in a box, to like more like, no, I kind of, go outside of like my role and try to like learn new things. Those are the people who do pretty well. If you're new to the community, you'll definitely want to subscribe. So hit the subscribe button and instantly you will be connected to our network. I view myself sometimes as a customer, and so everything I'm saying is exactly what I would want for myself as I would want for you. We even have a magazine, and the magazine is something we just launched. It's like a summary magazine, but it helps kind of like guide people
from like all the noise out there about like, general social media, like news and nonsense. And we distill it down like into like more higher quality information from like high quality sources. So that way you can be a little bit more leveled up about like emerging technology, like AI, for example, or web development, software engineering. So this month we put out a guide to AI. It's aimed at some of the newbies out there and people who need fundamentals. If you like that direction, be sure to engage with us and let us know what more you want, what more kind of videos and magazine content you'd like. And by doing all these things, you're supporting the community, helping us grow. But when we grow, you grow because you get a more powerful network that you can use to your advantage and build your career upwards. All right, to your success. I'll see you around the community.
Yeah, actually going back to you then, like, can you first talk to us about like where you were like mentally, like in the beginning, and like just kind of like maybe think back to that time, like what were your concerns at that time? Like why did you really want to get away from accounting? Because you spent a lot of time there first,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. So I think the main reason was money was a big attractor for sure. It was like looking at the income for web developers and software engineers, and it's like, wow, they're making a lot more money than I am. So I need to figure out how to get into that. But then also it was just the passion that started with me, where as I started learning it, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like I can write some code and I can make a thing, and it's never been made before, and it probably never will be made again exactly the way I made it, and that's awesome. And so I just kind of led one thing after another, and just started going with it. I think to your point about the how scary the industry is right now, I think one, it's worth acknowledging, yes, it is scary right now. That is a valid concern. But I think the biggest thing is being able uh, to be flexible and not just pigeonhole yourself and say like, no, I'm only going to look for traditional software engineering roles at XYZ companies, and they have to be this level, and they have to allow me these perks, and all of those things. You're just adding a ton of restrictions on yourself. And so I
Yeah.
think you need to be more open and look at the actual responsibilities of the job, not even the title. Because like, for instance, I'm a senior program manager right now. There's not even the word technical in my name, nor engineer or any of that. But I write code, and I do so frequently. And so it's important to understand the job that you're applying to more than just titles, because especially right now with AI and the tooling getting more and more mature, those traditional software engineering roles as we see them today are gonna go away. They're not going to be there anymore. And instead,
Yeah.
it's going to be that higher level of, can you effectively use those AI tools to deliver production ready code or not? And it's not going to matter if you yourself are a software engineer and have all the experience in the world if you can't leverage those tools.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's sort of a theme that I've been hearing all the time is that roles, they're just evolving. People again who, say I want a React job or I want an Angular JS job, that might have worked probably like, 3 or 4 years ago, like, because you could, I mean, like jobs literally, like when you look online, you say I'm looking for a job, it literally says React developer or Angular
Mm-hmm.
developer. So oh yeah, I know React, I know Angular. Let me go and like apply for this job. And then I think part of it is the job process itself is pigeonholing in some ways, right? Like when you go through like applying for a job and you go through the interview, if you say too much about what you can do, you're not going to get the role. I kind of feel like that
Right.
counter like is counterintuitive. But then after you get the job, it's almost like, well, no, you're not a React developer. You're actually, like a strategist or like a program manager or a thinker. You need to like think outside the box, and like you have
Mm.
to have, everybody here like wears multiple hats. I've heard this so many times. So it's almost kind of like a game that we play a little bit with ourselves and also the way we work with others. Um, but that said, so going back to you first off, and then we'll kind of like ease into this theme. I want to still kind of like stay with you like at the beginning, like right, like because I think a lot of the concerns that people have today are very much the same concerns that we had, like 5 years ago, 10 years
Sure.
ago. Um, like the technology may have changed, but even at that time too, like the technology was changing, would you say? It was
Hmm.
pretty rapid. And
Yeah.
so you had to, I mean, like you saw this, you noticed it, but like people were going to coding boot camps at that time. Like you said, you were saying, oh, I see the money here. Let me jump in on this. I feel like I'm a smart person. I could learn this, in 12 weeks or 6 months, whatever the time frame is, and then
Yep.
maybe I'll come out a little bit better for it. So, do you remember those days? Maybe elaborate. Like again, like how did you move from accounting into software engineering?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't a boot camp. For me, it was just self-guided learning. Lots of YouTube and like free code camp, things like that. Um, and it was it was something where like I felt a need to pivot, and so I was my own driving force, and so I would just continuously work on it, and honestly, to be transparent, I would work harder on learning to code and build web apps when I would get frustrated at work, because then I would start kind of looking for the exit door. And so I'm like, man, I really had a bad day. Like, I'm gonna write a whole bunch of code. Like, I'm gonna get this web dev thing happening, and so it pushed me to go further. And I think as far as like, there was definitely that uncertainty of applying to jobs and just not even getting any response back or any of that, or like recruiters reaching out, but then when you say, "Oh yeah, I'd like to be considered," then you just never hear back from them again.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely end up feeling insecure about your own capabilities, and I think the advice I would give my former self is just stick with it, just keep building things, and try and make what you're doing as visible as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think again, the tidbits that I hear, like you're saying, like are like very good themes. Like obviously, like you said, when you were working at the job you didn't like, that gave you the fuel to like study harder on the thing you really wanted.
Right.
And this is sort of like something that I share with students of mine, like people that I work with who need mentoring, especially some of the younger folk. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I'm not sure what it is. And I don't want to come off like sounding like a, quote unquote, like boomer, millennial, or whatever you might call it. But it's just like I think that a lot of times, like when I talk to like the younger people, they don't seem to resonate with this idea of like, oh, I need to work harder, right? Like I don't want
Mm.
to like I need to work harder. Like it's almost the opposite. It's almost like, no, I already worked really, really hard. You just don't understand. I worked really, really hard. You just don't understand. And it becomes like this like argument. And
Yeah.
I get it, like I get it because like I can understand the frustration out there. Like it is probably way harder at the moment to get a job given all the competition and maybe some globalization and like all kinds of factors. But like when I say things like, you have to use this fuel, or you say things as you use this fuel to make yourself stand out from the competition, you might get a lot of pushback. So what would
Mm-hmm.
your response be, for the younger person watching? Because they probably are like at the point where they probably want to like, punch the screen and be like, shut up, both of you. You guys are
Yeah.
like boomers, What are you talking
Well,
about?
the blunt feedback I would give is the universe doesn't care. So you can say that you've worked hard, and you can have your resume out there, you can have your LinkedIn out there, you can have things built, and if you're not getting the job offers, then that's a sign that the universe, the industry, doesn't know, and so you need to change something. Whether that be your resume is not clear enough, showing what your work experience is that applies to the job you're applying for, or similar with your LinkedIn profile, or if it's that the projects you built are too simple, or they don't use the right technologies for what's in demand right now. Like, there's always something, and
Yeah, I would agree.
so rather than just saying, well, they just don't know. Okay, that agreed. They don't know. So what are you going to do about it? Like, it all comes back to you. It doesn't, like, you can't tell a hiring company that never responded back to you, oh, well, you need to take a second look because you just didn't see what I can do. Because they literally just don't respond. So you have nothing.
Absolutely. I think that is like, ultimately still like the harsh, bitter truth that people have to just deal with, and even like for us too, like if we're out of work, like even with all of our experience, if we're not getting called back, like I think both you and I probably just know like, okay, if we're not getting calls back, we have to work. Like we have to
Yep.
figure out like what it is that's not working until we get there. So, again, when I think of people who are watching this and like if you're just like really frustrated, you might have to just kind of like I mentioned this like actually in like another video, but like you have to build sort of like a care package framework for yourself
Mm.
where you can kind of be like, okay, your own cheerleader. And maybe just like you might want to like use some of your money to have other people cheer you on. Like for me, example, I go to the gym and I have a friend there that helps me work out, and when I go there, like I tell them my problems or whatever, and like they're kind of half listening, but they're also kind of like half saying you can do it. Like I believe in you. And so like that for me is like a good system because every time I finish the gym, I feel the endorphins, I feel good, and then like I feel like okay, I'm not in like this kind of brain rot mode where the alternative I think is like a lot of like younger people will read social media or like look at TikTok, scroll through a lot of the content, and then it just like completely destroys them because they're seeing so much negativity.
Hmm.
Because again, that stuff gets amplified. And so by the time they actually go to start work or even look for a job, they're just like drained. They're mentally drained. They're just fatigued. And instead of taking like the day on a strong note, it's almost like you're taking it on like this negative note, and you lose your willpower. So for me, like I identified that and I was like, I need to just kind of step away from the toxicity. Like even just like in the beginning of the morning, like I won't even look at my phone. I'll literally like just go to the gym first, feel good, then get into work mode because I know otherwise I'm just not going to do well. Any
Right.
thoughts there? Do you have a positive framework?
Yeah. I think a support system is definitely needed. Whether it be friends, family, uh, former colleagues, current colleagues, whatever. Um, yeah, I think you need something, and you need it to be a positive place. Because like if rely too heavily like on social media, like you said, then it can just be a downward spiral, and it can just keep getting more and more negative.
Yes.
Um, and so yeah, I think you need that. But then also I think it's setting your expectations well. So like we know this, both in program management, but also like as devs, you always want to under promise and over deliver. And so I
Right.
think you need to treat yourself as the customer when you're trying to get a new job, and you need to under promise to yourself what the result is going to be. And like for instance, before I got offered the job at Microsoft, I distinctly remember I told one of my colleagues that I had put in my application for the job, and he was like, "Oh, that'd be so awesome if you got hired at Microsoft." And I'm like, "It's never gonna happen." I was like, "There's no way." I was like, "This is like the first legitimate interview that I'm having in tech. There's no way I'm gonna get offered the job." And it wasn't so much me saying like, "Oh, I'm not good enough for the job." It's just me managing my own expectations, saying like it's very unlikely, talking about probabilities, that I'm actually going to get this job, and so I just go into it not expecting it, and so I think that allows you to be pleasantly surprised when you get a call back or you get a secondary interview or ultimately you get an offer.
That's good. That's good advice. I think just kind of having like lower expectations is actually like helpful like for the mind because like you like with the lower expectations, you're not kind of like worried so much like if you know you don't hit it. It's kind of like, well, I had lower expectations for myself. I would say just maybe a little bit of it is like it could be self-defeating. So I almost kind of
Mm.
feel like, if you kind of say like I am at a certain level and this is what I expect, and then you taper that with reality a little bit, and then you kind of lower your expectations a little bit over time, then maybe that might be like a better measure of like where you really are. Think about those things, right? Like, and again, I want to hear your thoughts too. Like I want to know like what especially are you like interested in taking on for yourself? Because we talked a little bit about like what you were interested in and how you built projects. Like what does some of that look like now?
Yeah.
How are you making
Um,
that wheel for yourself work?
yeah. So the current role I'm in, um, I I manage a variety of different services, and they take different forms. So some of them are low code apps where it's like automations and like even the public facing website for our program is built on it. And so I'll manage that stuff, but then I also manage like our Azure resources and build various things in there that are internal facing and pretty much everything in between. So like everything from full code to no code, if it's under the guise of technical, then it gets put into onto my plate. But where I've been expanding lately is because of my accounting background, I've been expanding into the financial management side
Oh,
of our
nice.
team,
Yeah.
and so like taking it on in order to develop processes around it and make it more optimal. And similarly, I've also been looking for opportunities in data analysis, and so getting into like Power BI reporting and data pipelines with Fabric and doing all of that in addition to what I already do. And like you said, it's not part of my role, but I see these other areas open up, and it's like, oh, that could be a growth area for me. I can
Hmm.
become a better employee, a better developer by being able to add that into my toolkit, and so I go after those areas too.
So this is actually pretty good. So kind of tying it all together, with React, I think like that was your focus um, way back, right? You learned React and
Yeah.
you also learned Microsoft tools. Um, first off, like, was that the first thing you learned, or was it just kind of like you built up to that? And then are you still using that now? Is that like what you're doing at the moment? And then you're kind of expanding on further things, or can you talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So React was the second framework I learned
Okay.
after HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I actually started with Angular, and I started building with that. Built like an e-commerce app with that, and then I got introduced to React, and it just clicked a lot easier for me. It just made a lot more sense to me, and so I started gravitating towards that. And as far as like, am I still using it today? Very much so. So I'm using it internally in different apps that we have that are internal facing, but then I'm also using it on a bunch of side projects that I've been building outside of Microsoft. So like I have a like personal financial management app that I've been building, and then I'm starting a new app right now that I'm working with a customer on that should automate a lot of like the background processes or back of house processes for like in-person businesses. So like nightclubs, things like that.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. So your main focus then, I guess, for people watching, right, like is just kind of you're into like this whole automation and like working with, are you working with small businesses, just for clarity here, or are you working with large
At
enterprise?
in my Microsoft capacity, no. It's just internal facing, so it's like
Internal.
tools that our teams need within HR. But yeah, my side projects, I'm working with a lot of small businesses on things like that.
Okay. And why small businesses? This is actually interesting too. Like, why do you work with small businesses?
So for me, it just was a sort of a coincidence. So I was at a conference, and I got to talking with someone else, and they sort of gave me this idea of an app that they think would be awesome to build. And for me, I was like, that sounds like fun building that, because it involved like payment integrations and other areas that I hadn't messed with yet. And so I'm like, sure, I'll help build it. And so I just started building it, and one thing led to another, and now we're talking to a couple businesses that they have like multiple locations, so it's pretty interesting.
So, one thing about that, I guess, this actually kind of helps. One thing that I've said to like past audiences is, especially for again like younger youth, if you're starting out, build, for the smaller businesses, build for, some of the take on like freelance and contract roles. Like I've said this like as like for people who are, they may have like a software engineering background. They might be looking for like software engineering, like the high paying roles, but they're just not getting it. So like I've always advocated for like taking, um, like smaller businesses and also just enterprise roles because like those are like very good. They'll pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that gives you the freedom to be able to kind of work on side projects, which will elevate you to be able to take on like the higher stuff when it's
Right.
your turn, right? Like sometimes it's not even about like your skill. It might just be like you're in a queue, just like very much like you're waiting for like, Nintendo Switch 2 to restock or something like that. It might just take a long time to get back to you. What I want to ask you is like, how do you manage your time? Like, how do you say, okay, I'm working on stuff for my current company, but I'm also working on stuff outside of that for fun and practice. And then, how do you not go insane from like just overload?
Yeah, yeah. It's a really great question, because you add on the fact that I'm a father of three,
Yeah.
and they're in
Yeah, it's hard.
sports and all of that. Plus, I volunteer for a nonprofit, and I do work for them. So yeah, it's a lot, and I would say the way I manage my time is primarily through time boxing, just very intense scheduling and knowing like, okay, I'm going to devote this much time uh, on each day to Microsoft. I'm going to devote this much time to my side projects. I'm going to devote this much time to family and this much time to the nonprofits, and then whatever else is left, then it's flex time, and really sticking to it. because that's the hard part. Is it's like anyone can make a schedule, but then they can immediately forget that schedule and just do
Yeah.
whatever they're going to do anyways.
Yeah.
So you really have to stick to it and set reminders and actually follow those and like say, okay, I'm going to clock out. And I think the hardest part is being able to say no to your commitments and say like, no, I can't be available this evening because I'm doing this other thing. And so you just have to kind of stand your ground on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's incredibly hard if you're a parent. I think like family is going to throw all kinds of like, emotional stuff at you, especially like tear at your heartstrings a little bit if you're like denying, like one-on-one times. And so I get it too because like I have two kids and like I deal with grandparents too, my wife and all of that. And so for me too, I have to be very careful about like how I manage time and like um, I don't know if I've like shared this as much as I need to, but like I always kind of read a lot of time management books and I always try to ask this question to a lot of different people. Like I've been a fan of like the Brian Tracy books where they talk a lot about like, what is like your A task, what is your B task, what is your C task, and what can you outsource and not do at all, So I try to line up stuff when I'm scheduling, and then I say, all right, well, these are the things that are going to move the needle. Those are the A tasks. Those are the things that if I do, those are the things that are going to make me like better off the next year. And I try to like be really, careful about like taking on tasks below that. Like B tasks are important things that have to get done, but they just have to get done to like keep, like things going, the lights on,
Like
right?
chores.
Then like
Mm.
chores, yeah, like or taxes and stuff like that. C tasks, those are like just, like stuff I probably want to do, but it's not really like, going to move anything. It's just like having fun, like playing some games. But the thing is, you kind of have to do it because if you don't do enough fun tasks for yourself, then like what I've found, and I'll ask you again, like of your opinion, is if you don't take care of your happiness and your fun side, you don't give yourself like your inner child enough fun, then it rebels against you and it doesn't care about your A tasks or your B tasks. It might like you might start self-sabotaging yourself. You might
Mm.
like saying, like, screw this. I'm just gonna go and like, do some retail therapy right now. Why not? Buy myself a
Yeah.
Tesla, like, and you just like you get into a situation where you like threw like tons of money at a problem that you're having, which is like you're not like making your inner child at peace or like your inner person at peace. You're just throwing away money like to solve a problem, and that may not be the answer because you like still have to get this other work done. So I'm interested in hearing
Right.
your thoughts too. Like how do you manage your inner child with a lot of this pressure?
Yeah. I think it's sort of like dieting. So you want to intentionally add in those treats, those rewards, because if you don't do it intentionally, then you're gonna end up binging.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's kind of what you were referring to is like you will rebel eventually, and so you just have to intentionally put those time blocks in there. And for me, like just this past week, I blocked out a whole week where I knew like the end of the fiscal year for Microsoft is crazy, and there were a whole bunch of Q4 deliverables we had to get done, and so I'm like, okay, as soon as Q4 is over, so end of June, and I gave myself a few days buffer to the 4th of July weekend. I'm like, I'm taking the whole next week off, and I'm not doing anything, like no side projects, no volunteer work, no Microsoft, and I'm literally going out into the woods and not coming back for a week.
Nice. Oh
So I
wow.
think you just have to do it intentionally, because if you don't, it's gonna manifest itself one way or another.
Hmm. And how was that journey to the woods? What was the high point? Like what did you do? I'm
Oh,
curious
we
actually.
just went camping.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a pre-planned camping trip with my sons and some of their friends, and yeah, it was good. Hiking, fishing, swimming, all that.
So you were one with nature and you had to kind of like figure out how to survive and stuff like that a little bit.
Not quite. We had electricity and some running water, so it
Okay.
wasn't that bad.
Okay. And which part of the country did you go and visit?
It was out in Tahuya in Washington State.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
it's
Not
there are
familiar,
a
but
whole
like
bunch
I've
of
heard
lakes out
Washington's
there.
really good. Oh, okay, okay. If I'm there, I might ask you more questions about that for
Yeah,
sure.
totally.
I think a lot of people who want to get into like Microsoft, for example, are sort of like scared and they're not sure like what exactly they need to work on. So I
Hmm.
would like to hear from you, like what is it like? And then what was the interview like? And then what expectations do you think they have? And how can like somebody who's not working there meet those expectations, or what would the path be like to work towards it?
Yeah. Um, so I think the first thing I would state is my path into Microsoft. I wouldn't recommend that anyone follow. Um,
Okay.
I mean, I was a contractor for 4 years before
But how,
converting
but how did
over.
you get that contractor role? I feel like that's important to talk about too.
Sure.
Like don't not talk about it because it's not
Yeah.
it's very important.
Yeah. So I had a recruiter reach out to me via LinkedIn, and they gave me the job description and asked me if I'd be interested in it. And I looked over it, and there were a lot of alignments between what I was currently doing and what they were looking for. So like they were looking for someone who could manage their website, and I was already managing a website. They were looking for someone who could do process on automations and like service and like system integrations, and I was already doing that for my current company. And so I saw a lot of alignment, and so I said, sure, yeah, I'll apply for it. And I ended up going through two interviews, one technical, one more like a culture fit interview,
Hmm.
and by the end of it, ended up getting offered.
So can you break those down? Like like let's start with the beginning where you said like you felt like you were a fit. Because again, like some people don't know if they're a fit,
Hmm.
right? Like so what specifically were you doing like with your previous job that caught the eye of the recruiter or maybe Microsoft in proxy?
Yeah, yeah. So uh, my previous job had a couple WordPress websites, and so
Okay.
I was managing both of those, and um, primarily that was no code, but I had built uh, different things with like PHP in there,
Okay.
and done editing with HTML and CSS because this was when I was still learning it all,
Hmm.
and so I did those basic things, um, and so that made me feel like okay, this is the next logical step because I don't want to forever be editing WordPress sites. I would
Sure.
rather be building sites altogether, and so that was one piece of it. As far as like the system integration side of it, so we were doing e-commerce retail through that company, and so we had to integrate with our shipping provider for like shipping labels and calculating rates and all of that. Um, and so because of that, we also had to integrate with our accounting system, and so I had to set up those integrations so that way it would automate most of the process. And so I had that familiarity, and so yeah, it just seemed like a natural progression of the skills I was already developing,
Hmm.
to but just in a much bigger company.
And with this role in particular, right, like it was more like for internal tools. They wanted you to work on internal tools.
Yeah. So we have our public facing website, but aside from that, it's mostly internal tools, and so it's because I fall under HR, and so we have a lot of tools that we need for working with employees and
I
doing
see.
things for employees. And so like for instance, I've made like capacity tracking tools. I've made let's see what else, like intake processes for like requesting services, requesting support on things. I've made reporting tools for like the Microsoft library and archives. So different things like that. But yeah, a lot of internal facing stuff.
So when you were doing those things, those projects, right? Like now you're in the company, you're transitioning over from PHP and HTML to more like using like the full stack stuff, like the React and Angular, or was that something you kind of learned along the way, or did you already know it at that time? Because you
Yeah.
mentioned you started off with no code, and so I
Yep.
want to just kind of be clear.
Yeah, I was. So that's where the side projects came in clutch for me,
Okay.
because I wasn't using React at my job, and I mean still I don't use React a ton, and
Okay.
so I lean on my side projects to keep those skills sharp and continue developing them.
Sure.
Same thing with like GraphQL. Like I've never used GraphQL at either of my jobs, like former or current, but I use it heavily in the personal financial management app that I built,
Hmm.
and enough so that like I think it was 2023, I gave a talk on it at the GraphQL Summit, and
That's right.
so
Yeah.
it's it even if the skill doesn't apply to my current job, if it's something where I still see there's a market for it, I'll continue developing it in one way or another. Side projects if I have to.
That's really good, actually. I think you're self-aware and you understand like where the market is going and like how to kind of like position yourself for like new things and new responsibilities. Um, could you kind of talk a little bit about like why you picked GraphQL? Because you said you saw like something with it. Was it just something that like again, let me go back to like the standard person who might be like, the lay person might be just kind of like tuning in or whatever. Um, there's so many things out there, right? There's just so many tools. GraphQL is like one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Node.js, you don't even have to use GraphQL. You can just make REST servers with
Yep.
different backends. And that's actually a debate at this time too. Some people don't even really want to use GraphQL anymore. They just want to go back to REST. Um, then there's also just AI, and we can talk about this a little bit too, because I feel like it's the right time to talk about it. But how do you, like decide I'm going to spend, like 3 months or 4 months or 2 years, whatever the time frame might be, heavily invested in this thing. Like, how do you know there's going to even be a payoff? Because like that's actually
Yeah.
another thing too. Like a lot of people, especially from our past, I know this, like went really hard into like something, like maybe Ruby on Rails or, like maybe just jQuery, and those jobs dried up.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what do you do? But
Yeah.
and maybe if you want to keep the question simple, like just how did you even pick GraphQL?
Yeah. So I think with GraphQL, what initially attracted me to it was the idea that uh, you you could have the API built, and the consumers of that API could select which fields they wanted the data for, and you didn't have to write separate API endpoints for it, or any complicated logic to handle that. You could just write your API once, and they would be able to then say, okay, give me these data points and just those,
Hmm.
and deal
Hmm.
with it on the client side. And so that was the initial attraction to me. But in diving deeper into it, I really liked a lot of the tooling that Apollo has done with GraphQL, like the caching that they've set up automatically on client side and server side, and like optimistic updates are really great, and they just have a lot of features. And then I started learning about like supergraphs and having like a graph of graphs where you can pull in different data sources. So it could be that REST API that you created, but then it's also some REST API from another service. And it can be some other API out there that's maybe a GraphQL API. And you can take all three of those data sources and you can make those subgraphs inside this supergraph, and now someone can have that same potential but across multiple APIs. And so
Yeah.
that really is an amazing thing that like REST architecture by itself just can't do. And so
Right.
you need something else.
Right. Right. So the whole like kind of microservices and just kind of like keeping them all tied together in some way with a unifying like uh interface like GraphQL, like that was appealing to you, and so you were like, I want to just spend some time here and become an advocate. And I've heard this actually like from other people too, right? Like they kind of get into something that they really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just say, I'm going to become an advocate for it, and then they go and give a talk. I think like that also like helps their brand a little bit, right? Because
Sure.
now it's like you're not just, you know, again, like pigeonholed in like a box and saying like I'm just this thing for, this job that I got, 4 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago, like however
Yeah.
long you might be, that might not be reality. But like I'm just talking about like people in general, right? Like they kind of stay in one position and maybe like they don't really like kind of deviate from that. But like I keep hearing from you, you're saying that you found things that were really interesting to you and you wanted to go above and beyond. So, um, that's really cool, first off.
Yeah, well, it was the same way with like the Power Platform. Like when I joined Microsoft, I didn't really know anything about the Power Platform,
Hmm.
but our team had a Dynamics 365 CRM that was being finished building, and so as their technical program manager, I needed to understand that system and be able to troubleshoot things. And so I started learning more about it, and then as I learned about like the whole Power Platform, I started getting requests where it's like, oh, can you build me a solution that does this? And initially, like my dev instincts are like, oh, I'm gonna go write a bunch of code for that. But then a lot of times I find myself thinking code's not the best way for this because it's not going to be as maintainable by the users of it as it would be
Sure,
if I created it in like a low code way. And
sure.
and to
Yeah.
be clear, like low code, there's still a lot of points where you need that programming knowledge in order to make it work. Because
Hmm.
if you don't understand how APIs work and you don't understand how like programming logic works, then you will create the same problems you would create as a junior dev in a low code environment. You would have the same
Yeah.
issues of infinite looping and stack overflows, and all of those things can still happen even in that environment. So
Yeah.
that dev knowledge is still really useful even in there.
This makes me think actually, like after talking to you for, this much time and just kind of like getting a sense of like all of the advice you're giving, like I actually kind of feel like there is a lot of job opportunity because it may not be exciting. I feel like that might be like the thing. But there's a lot of tools, especially like just kind of from hearing you talk, right? Like that, I think are still overwhelming that a lot of companies and people in companies have to use. And so let's say, you're not getting a dev job, like a traditional software
Mm-hmm.
engineer role. If you go into like another um, like aspect at the same company where it's like you're more working with like low code solutions, or you're working with tools that are not as popular, right? But if you're the person to kind of help make it more smooth for everybody involved,
Yeah.
that's a good paying position. And I think again, like I've heard this from other people too, like enterprise companies, like they'll spend a lot of money on low code tools or just dev tools, but then like they won't have anybody because everybody wants to go do the exciting thing, like work with the latest technology. So like all these other areas just sort of get abandoned, and they're like scrapping, they're like trying really hard to find like a really good tech person for their stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is actually a great opportunity you're
Well,
bringing up.
and there's also this intersection where um, these low code tools have been built for the business users. However, like at Microsoft, that creates a huge governance risk for us and a huge compliance risk of, well, how do we make sure that they're building things that don't that don't create security vulnerabilities, for instance.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's really easy in like Power Automate to create like an HTTP connector that allows you to access some other service that's out in the public web, um, and you can unwittingly end up causing a security vulnerability. And so
Hmm.
what's
Hmm.
interesting is that like a lot of the team members that I work with, they either don't have the capacity because of other work priorities, or they are too scared to use these low
Mess it
code
up.
tools because
Sure.
then they're going to get hammered by compliance because they did it in an insecure way, or they violated some other compliance requirement. And so there's still an opportunity for people like me to say, okay, well, let me build it in a way that I know will be compliant, and then I
Hmm.
can train you on how I built it, and I can hand it off to you to maintain, and then I can provide ongoing support, whatever. But now I'm empowering you as a business user to take it on and run with it.
I love that. I love that story, and I feel like that's so powerful because like what you're saying right now actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like the industry is taking off at breakneck speeds, and we're leaving a lot of older stuff behind. And there was actually an article about this too, right? Like a lot of the stuff, and in fact, we even had a meetup on it actually. So a lot of stuff from like 10 years ago, like the web from 10 years ago, is still searchable. It's
Hmm.
still something you can find, but there's like if you visit like a WordPress site, for example, there's a lot of security holes
Oh yeah.
because like no one has updated anything. In fact, like many popular like websites are still running on like old like PHP servers, from PHP 5. They're using jQuery heavily. They're using like they just haven't modernized or they never saw the incentive to. And I'm not saying
Yep.
you need to go there and work there, but like just specializing and being able to like say, hey, I will help you modernize this, and then being able to hand it back to them and then go on to another role and just keep going. That'll do like I mean that's like huge moneymaker in itself. You don't even have to be an employee. You can be a business just doing this,
Oh
running
yeah.
it. So, you
When I
know,
first joined, when I first joined this team, our public-facing website, uh, or I'm sorry, not the public-facing website, the internal-facing website that we had, it was still using, like, the developers were actively writing jQuery in it, and this was in 2020 when I joined. They were
wow. Yeah.
actively writing jQuery, and I had to tell them, like, stop. There's a better way. We can do this with mostly through vanilla JavaScript. Like, we don't need jQuery for all of this anymore.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so helping them refactor. And so yeah, there's definitely a market for people who have modern skills and are able to take legacy tech and move it forward, to get it up to modern.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and then the security issue, like just kind of like taking it one more step, right? Like all these things you're saying, like all these concerns that businesses have, like if you can be the person who is able to solve that, and you do it well, I mean, like you can ask for more money because like that's a in-demand thing anyway. Like people are afraid to do it themselves.
Yeah.
You're coming in and saying, I can do this for you. I have the expertise. You know, if somebody tries to lowball you, it's like a bigger risk for them to not
Mm-hmm.
take care of those vulnerabilities. Like, you know, if they mess up data or they get hacked or lawsuits,
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't want to be paying that. I would want to be just like, all right, I'll pay you. You help me fix this, modernize it, and then like I can go about staying profitable. So I feel like what you just said here is like amazing. It's like it's super gold.
Yep.
It's Bitcoin. All right, cool. So, yeah, I think we can wrap up here a little bit.
Sure.
I don't want to take all of your time, but I think this is actually really interesting ultimately at the end here. Like you're kind of making me think about like what could be future talks, especially for the group, especially if you're interested. I know that you have a very passionate approach to like self-learning, and I love that about you, and I love that like for HackBuddy because that's also what we also want to, emphasize here again is just being aware, taking care of your own branding. Um, on that note, right, let me just ask you really quickly, how do you mentor yourself, right? Like,
Mm.
so are you using AI tools in this last point here to like help yourself? And what are those AI tools? Or are you like old school and are you just reading books in a cafe? Because I love that too, actually. I love reading books at a cafe and just shutting out social media for a while
Mm-hmm.
and then just following a tutorial. What's your self-learning path look like?
Um, my answer would be D, all of the above. Uh, so like I do read books for sure. Um,
It's cool.
and
Reading books is in. I
yeah,
love reading books.
and I do still watch YouTube videos on tech that I don't get to use frequently, um, and I do use AI to help me learn, and also to do work. So like a lot of times I get asked to do things that require tools or tech that I don't have familiarity with. Like I've had to write PowerShell scripts before I ever knew anything about PowerShell. I had to write Bash scripts before I knew anything about Bash, and so whenever I found myself in that gap, I I use like AI tools, specifically Copilot at work, um, to help me write that code, and not just to help me write it, but also to help me understand it, because that's a big piece of it. Is it's like I do not want to run a script or any type of code that I don't understand.
Sure.
Um, and so I don't just have it write it, but I also am like, okay, what does this specific piece mean? I don't understand this, and I have it explain it to me, and like then when I think I get the idea, using like programming knowledge that I already have, like, oh, I need a loop here, or I need an if statement here, then it's like, okay, let me give it a shot writing it myself, and then I'll use AI to kind of review my code and say, oh, in in Bash it would be better if you wrote it like this instead of like that.
I see. hmm Are you using, so you said Copilot to do that? Is that
Yeah,
what
so
you were
like
saying?
um, sometimes I'll use GitHub Copilot a lot in VS Code, and
Okay,
it helps that it's free for us internally.
sure.
Um, but then I also use like M365 Copilot to sort of like think through the logic of it in a more conversation way,
Okay.
rather than getting into like files and writing the code yet. Um, yeah, those are the main ones. I've tried using a lot of the others, and it's mixed.
So with that said, I just want to give the mic to you one more time and just kind of ask, do you have any like, things that you want to say, like in summary, just like from our conversation today? Final thoughts for like this audience that is watching and just like, just like overall advice or like things that are uplifting.
Sure. I think the main thing I would say is to to be persistent, don't give up. And I know that's kind of trite to say, especially from my position, but it's true. And like I definitely wanted to give up at multiple points as a contractor at Microsoft for 4 years. I'm like, they're never going to convert me. It's never going to happen. And
That's
so
true.
you
Yeah.
got to stay persistent. But also like just thanks to all of you, like this community is really great. Like the fact that devs want to talk to each other and they want to say like, well, what's your story? And sort of talk about that. Like after like conference talks I've given and like this conversation and other areas, it's a great community to be part of. So don't be scared to like reach out and ask for help.
Very nice. Well, I'm grateful to talk to you today, and I appreciate your time. And yeah, like I said, just after this, if you think of anything and you just want to share again, you're welcome to come back on and we can have you and we can talk about new things. But yeah, I hope you have a great weekend at the time of recording. It's Friday, so enjoy. And yeah, again, thank you, and I'll see you in the next coffee chat or meetup.
Yeah, you too, Vijay. All right, take care.